think it was Osho, was it Osho's ashram that had a notice at the door outside saying, leave your sandals and your mind at the door? Was that, yeah, it was. That was Osho, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great line. It's a really great line. You know, I mean, the obvious response is, if only we could. You know, we can't leave our mind at the door, but...
Let alone our sandals.
Let alone our sandals. Heaven forbid.
No one to leave them.
Yeah. We can't leave our mind at the door, but I mean, it's a bit fanciful for me to say that our mind might leave us. What I really mean by that is the mind might be seen for. It might be seen for what it is. What's that mean? What is the mind? What is it? It's a flow of energy. A constant, ever-changing flow of energy.
What is seeing it for what it is? You said it can be seen.
It may be seen for what it is.
What is doing the seeing?
No one. No one. So when there's no one there, it's a bit like non-duality or oneness itself. When there's no one there to see it, it can be seen. I'm sorry that sounds so paradoxical, because it isn't. It does sound paradoxical, but it isn't really. It's an attempt to describe what can happen, what can apparently happen. Yeah. So the mind may be seen for what it is, which is, if you like, an energy stream, which manifests itself as thought, let's say loosely thought, feeling, etc., images. Who's seeing that?
Yeah,
no one. That can be seen when there's no one there to see it. As long as there's someone there to see it, it can't be seen.
There's one that's seeing it.
Yes, you could say that. You could say that, because there's only one. So anything that we refer to with a kind of like an active verb like that, yeah, that's all that can be happening. Yeah. So, I mean, one of my favourite lines, isn't it, is, if you like, is, you know, is that, you know, emptiness is seen, silence is seen, silence is heard, emptiness is seen. Whatever. Well, who's hearing that? Who's hearing that? Who's seeing it? Who's experiencing that? No one, of course, no one. It's just a language form to say that, you know, that's what is arising. You know, if you like. Now I'm going to go back to Buddhism and quote the Buddha on this. You know, if you like, it's just, you know, it's experience simply happens. You know, so in Buddhism, actions there are, no doer thereof. It's beautiful, right? It's wonderful. I mean, that gets it. Just that one line. Actions there are, but no doer thereof. Sam Harris, I don't know whether he's quoting from somebody or not. There is no rider on the horse. That's a lovely one. I like that one too. There is no rider on the horse.
I asked about memory.
Right.
Memory. You said you had a memory of giving a talk in Brighton.
Yeah.
But are you also saying that didn't happen?
Yes. It's you know, there's a character here. I don't know if I've said this yet this afternoon. I may not have done, but I mean, I do say it, you know, in a lot of talks. You know, you could say there's a, you know, if you like, this is an appearance. Well, what's in the appearance? All sorts of things are in the appearance. Cameras, floors, chairs. One very important thing that's in the appearance, well, not important, but kind of sort of significant in a way, not important at all, but kind of interesting, is characters. So there's a character there, there's a character here, there's a character called Richard. The character has a memory, right? This character has a memory which is particularly bad, but nevertheless, it's not that bad. Yeah, so there's a character who has a memory of holding a meeting in Brighton last month. Yeah. Isn't that weird? Isn't that strange? There's only this, there's just this. But as I've said many a time, you know, the character, well, first I say one thing, then I correct it. So let's do it that way around. There's a character who lives in time. What that actually means is there's a character who lives in the appearance of time. There's a character who lives in space, which actually means there's a character who lives in the appearance of space.
So for you, the memory doesn't prove the existence of something that happened.
For me, that, if I was to frame that as a question, which I could, for me I would say that question doesn't even arise. For me, whatever I was here, that question doesn't even arise. You know, because there's experience, and part of that experience is memory of an apparent past and expectation, notice the air quotations, of an apparent future. That's what it's like for there to be a character which goes on as long as physical death hasn't occurred. See how difficult it is to talk about this, because again, physical death is an event which happens in an apparent non-existent future. Just forget about all that, make it really ordinary.
Excuse me.
Oh, I've slightly lost the thread there.
Yeah, I was going to say, what about shared memory, like between two
Yeah.
or more people?
That happens, doesn't it? So that's part of the appearance, shared memory, yeah. I mean, it's kind of obvious, isn't it, that the character lives in time and space. And yet, nevertheless, it may be possible to see that there is only this, in which there is no time. Not a very brief time, but in which there is no time. And in which there is no space. I've kind of, at this point, I've referred to this often before as well when we talk about this. You know, if you think of the title of Nisargadatta's book, I Am That. I don't know what Nisargadatta meant by that. I can't, you know, I can give my interpretation, I don't know if it's right. But from my interpretation, I am that, you know, is a very, very clear statement of what's seen. When this is seen, I and that are one. Because there is no I, and there is no that, there's just whatever's happening.
You mean, I am that, meaning I am space, I am the space?
No, everything. There is no difference, there is just everything. There is just everything, and it's unitary. That's part of the shock. If this collapses, when I say this, I mean whatever you want to call it, the impression, the illusion, the feeling, whatever we want to call it, that this lives in separation, that this is, if you like, an autonomous being living in separation. When that collapses, then literally what is seen is, there is, I only ever find quite a clumsy way of saying this, so this could be picked apart, you know, that when this collapses, it's seen that awareness is equally everywhere, and because it's everywhere, there is no everywhere. It means there is no space. Space is created by the illusion that awareness is here in this place. And it's not there in that chair, and it's definitely not there in that wall. So that creates the illusion of space. Awareness is here in this somehow, obviously not quite in this physical frame, but nevertheless somehow localized here. And there is a wall which is somehow localized over there and is different from this awareness. So there's space between the two. When that collapses, there's no space. If this is making sense, by the way, you're definitely not getting it. Except by reference that if this has happened, then you will be getting it, except if this has happened, you'll also know that this speaking is unnecessary. But you know, if the mind is sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I'm getting that. No, definitely not. The mind can't get this. The mind cannot get this. So I think I might have said this in the first half, I'm not sure, but if like me, in this imaginary past called the history of whatever, you know, Richard or Henry or James or Tony or Christine or Mary or whatever, you know, if there was a sort of certain kind of spiritual seeking, you might have come across all sorts of metaphysical ideas, spiritual ideas, Zen ideas, all sorts of very, very, very puzzling statements. And one of the things that can happen is that when this is seen, it's realised, oh no, that wasn't I mean, some of them may just have been kind of mysterious monkeying around with the mind, but some of them, it's just like, no, that wasn't a mysterious statement, it was just literal. It was just a literal description of what's seen when the person drops. So I've said this many times before, I might have said it before too, I can't remember, you know, one of the best known Zen sayings is, you know, at first mounting to mountains, then mounting to no longer mountains, then mounting to mountains again. What the hell does that mean? Well, it becomes perfectly obvious what that means if there's awakening. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, and then because the system gets used to the extraordinary, oh, you didn't do the ducking nearly so effectively that time. Anyway, bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Fine.
Bye-bye. Where were we?
System getting used to the extraordinary.
Yeah, actually, no memory at all.
The system getting used to the
Yeah.
extraordinary.
So, first mounting to mountains, everything's just ordinary, da. Then awakening, mountains are no longer mountains. Nothing is any longer itself in awakening. But then, if the system settles down, then, if you like, the new way of seeing becomes the natural state, and then mountains are just mountains again. So there's nothing particularly, you know, I used to sort of look at quotations like that and think, oh God, that's a sort of Zen koan-like paradox. If I go and hit my head against a wall for about 37 days, I might work out what that means. No, there's nothing in it to work out. It's just a literal description.
I suppose the brain is vain, isn't it? The brain is very vain. It thinks it can work things out.
Absolutely. It's the mind that does not exist, the mind that is a process of thinking rather than a thing, and no such thing as a mind, but a process of thinking which we, if you like, construe as the mind. Absolutely, it's determined. Yeah.
There's a lot of vanity there, isn't there? Yes, I can think.
Well, you could say that. Yeah. Well, you could say that, or you could just say that's just the natural state of the mind. It's just, or given that we just said that the mind doesn't exist, it's just a flow of thoughts, you could say, well, it's just the natural state of the ego. Then we'd have to say, of course, the ego doesn't really exist, it's just a kind of continuous flow of sensation, etc. Yeah. But yeah, if you want to see it as vain, fair enough. I think that's a bit harsh, but... I mean, the mind can't help doing that. The mind's an inquisitive little monkey and wants to work things out, and it believes it can. And there's a lot of stuff the mind can work out. I mean, quantum physics. I mean, that's amazing. But not this. This is in a sense what's so frustrating about this kind of communication. The mind cannot get a purchase on it.
I suppose we can't see, with our eyes, we can't see X-ray. We know there's a limit. Our eyes can see amazing things, but there's a bandwidth limit, isn't there?
Yeah.
Ditto for the mind, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. About quantum physics and da-da-da, but then...
Yeah, except I want to say, I think I get the kind of analogies. I want to say that, you know, that the reason the mind can't get this is not because the mind is not developed enough. In other words, if we could somehow supercharge the mind, then it would be able to get this. It's not that. The mind can't get this because in a way it's the mind, it's the mind that's blocking out the view. So if we supercharge the mind, it will become even better at blocking out the view.
Does your mind still try and work things out?
Well, I don't have a mind, of course,
Okay,
but neither do you. Neither do you. Yes. You know, but
the thinking still trying.
The thinking.
Problem solve, you know.
Yeah. What kind of problems?
Like, you know, when you're listening to quantum physics, start trying to understand it and unravel it so you can get a grip of it.
Yeah, for about 35 seconds, and then I
Okay.
start getting a headache. So yeah. There's still I mean this process which we for convenience we call the mind, still finds a lot of things interesting, and may well try to work something out. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What about reading a novel and getting involved with the
can't
story?
do that. What?
Right. Yeah. You
No, can't
and
do that.
films.
Hmm?
Non-fiction.
Yeah.
Fiction. So non-fiction, but not fiction.
Can do fiction
Okay.
anymore. Yeah, but I don't. So what?
No, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I did fiction.
Why can't you do fiction?
I don't know if there's anything mysterious about it. I don't know if it's got anything to do with this or not. I did English literature at university. I can't believe it. A grateful government paid me to go to university and read novels. Can you believe it? For 3 years. And then I don't know.
Would you watch films? You go to movies, don't
Not
you?
very much, but I will. Yeah. Yeah, there has been a kind of drop of interest in fictions. But so what, in a way? I don't think that's necessarily got anything to do with what we're talking about here. I think it's a kind of fairly common thing that happens. I've talked to other people, they get to a point where,
Is it because you're not getting involved with a story, your own story, or a story about who, and then why would you bring in other stories, more narratives, because the narrative is a problem?
It may be, I don't know. I mean, it may have something much more basic and fundamental with that. I mean, I think a lot of people who are interested in fictions or whatever become less interested as they get older, and it may just simply be the simple thing that you've come across a lot of them. So, like, what are the chances that you're going to come across one that's really mind-blowingly original to you? I mean, my favourite film I saw when I was 18, and I went to see it 3 times in a week. Right? But what are the chances now that there's any possibility I might see a film that would be so original that, do you know what I mean? That it would have that effect. And that film, if I'd seen it when I was 50 rather than 18, it would probably have had very little effect on me. So that's kind of ordinary biographical stuff. I wouldn't, I don't know that I'd make anything of it.
Richard, are you, maybe, I'm hearing possibly, the illusion continues, but there's no longer anyone to believe it?
Yeah, you could, yes. Yeah, the only reason I was slightly there, I'm just sort of working out word illusion through my...
Well, something.
Right,
The play, I don't know.
Yeah, the play, yes, this continues, this continues, this continues as long as it continues.
But it's not believed. None of it makes sense. The words don't, but it's sort of not believed, but It's not believed.
Yeah.
Not believed as the only thing. Maybe I don't know how to put it.
Yeah,
But
no,
it's
because there isn't any way of putting
No,
it.
it's something because otherwise it doesn't.
Because
you
we
think it's
look,
all going to disappear, but it
Because-
clearly doesn't.
because we're looking for characteristics.
Yeah,
We're looking for characteristics to put on, let's say, the individual,
yeah.
and we can't. You can't.
No.
You know, but I mean, like if there are tendencies. Like I've said, we've spoken about some of those tendencies. That one, I think, most noticeable tendencies. There are tendencies for certain feelings to be experienced less or not at all,
Yeah.
and for other feelings, using that word very loosely, to be stronger or experienced more. I mean, one thing that is often reported, I don't know if we've used this word yet this afternoon, it's a bit of a kind of psycho-babble techno word, but I think it does have some importance, is immediacy. Everything becomes kind of more immediate. The more neurotic the apparent mind is, the more every experience is filtered through that neurosis before it is experienced. Yeah, I'm aware of the paradox in what I said, but I can't get away from it. So, if some, or a great deal, or even all of that neurotic energy is dispersed or whatever, then there is simply less processing of the experience, and the experience is more raw, let's say, is more immediate.
Immediate. That is what is delightful. The immediacy of things is wonderful.
Yes, and also painful. That's also possible, because unfiltered is unfiltered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of colours or a plant or a leaf or
Yes, sure.
Whatever.
Yeah. In terms of just simple sensory experiences, yes.
yes.
Yeah, sure.
But obviously you're talking about everything.
The whole, any possible experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But the fact that, say, I mean, if we take an experience that in conventional terms might be considered as negative, and then talk about that being experienced more fully and more in the raw, that might sound like a negative thing, but it isn't.
No.
If the alternative is this long, drawn-out, neurotic kind of experience that I talked about. So raw anger, for example, can be, well, it can be a much more full-on, obviously a more full-on experience, but equally a less drawn-out experience. Bang, gone. But I think there's a trap, isn't there? I mean, out there are offerings. There are offerings which suggest that what this is really about is going beyond the possibility of having uncomfortable experiences. And that's a real trap, I think. You know, if someone's making that offering, it usually involves a very long, hard and expensive road of training. Which might end up with a very desiccated person at the end of it. Maybe we've already covered that today, I can't remember.
Well, I suppose anything that wants to make things better for the person is not what you're talking about, really.
Yeah, it's not what I'm talking about, yeah. And there are ways in which we can reduce our susceptibility to certain kinds of suffering by reducing our aliveness, and that's what I mean by kind of creating a desiccated personality.
Yeah. I once went to a meeting and the guy said he hadn't been, I have not been south for 3 years.
Oh,
I ran, I never went back.
Yeah.
He's very intelligent, I'm sure he meant well, but
Yeah,
no, there's something missing.
yeah, sure,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I relate to that, yeah. And I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's within the bounds of possibility that somebody, someone where there is this openness or whatever, it's possible that that could be the case.
Yeah.
It's when somebody is giving a communication which makes feeling sad illegitimate,
Yeah,
I'd be straight out as well.
yeah.
Or more so, what tends to happen more in the kind of, air quotations, in the spiritual teaching world, is rather than sadness, it's anger that's made illegitimate.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I'd be straight out of the door. Yeah.
I'm happy to say that today's meeting is more confusing than usual.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, crikey. Bonus.
Bonus.
Can you put your finger on any part of that? Or?
Well,
I mean, we could, if you can find the confusing part, we could ruin your day by clarifying
completely.
it.
Well, I think somehow, from your talking and being here, there's there's more of a regression of your psychotherapy of where a point of reference might be. That's all. So there's less places to look from, further place to consider things from. I don't know exactly. I'm making it up as I go along. I don't know, but something like that. So, therefore, there would be less apparent explications, even subtle little explications of what we may be saying to fit it in some way. I would say something of that nature. So, yeah, if I say it's more raw, it's not exactly what we're talking about, but in a way, it's, there we go. It's meeting a less, well, not less subtle, I don't know, less, there's not the processes that sometimes there are, tiny little subtle processes that deal with it. Not being dealt with in the same way, thank goodness. That makes sense.
No.
We're both confused.
Well, I thought I wasn't till then, but now I am. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to know. That's just.
When you say that there's not the processes, do you mean
In here?
there?
Yeah,
Right.
no, habitual. Yeah. Yes. That's all. I mean, just
Yeah.
a bit different. That's all. Just so in that way, it's. I suppose it's. The confusion is allowed.
Yeah, I'd say it's almost mandatory.
Well, within here, yes, I know. It is.
I'm not picking on you. I don't
No,
think you in
clearly.
particular. I just be, if you're not well, if you're not confused, as they say, if you're not well, I think the original term was if you're not depressed, you're not paying attention. But my version, my version in here would be if you're not confused, you're not paying
I
attention.
think I would be depressed with you.
No. But if you're not confused, as far as this is, that's for life out there. But as far as these meetings are concerned, if you're not confused, you're not paying attention.
All right, there's less of any sense of being able to sort it out. Put it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. Well, if there were any good signs, I'd be tempted to say, well, that might be a good sign, because there aren't any good signs. It's just
No,
what's happening. Yeah.
But it's nice. I mean, I can't say it's not nice to be confused.
The experience here when I used to go to talks like this and sit in the audience was that there came a point, I don't know if this is what you're saying, it may be, it may relate to it, there came a point, before this point, this mind thought it could work out what was being said, and then there came a point where it gave up, it realised it couldn't, and although that was no better or worse, it was definitely more relaxing from then on. Because up to that point there'd been that kind of tension. If only I tried harder, I could work this out. Well, firstly, no, I couldn't. But secondly, even if I could, well, there's no brownie points for this, for that. You know, working this out doesn't get us anywhere.
Yeah, there's that. But yes, I think what has gone today is some sort of sense of being able to deal with the confusion.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So I'm not trying to work from it. That stopped a while ago.
Yeah.
But I'd had some sort of attitude that made it all right.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, disappeared.
Well, if this was a path, which it isn't,
Quite.
and if you were walking along it, which you're not, I would say, well, that would be a very good place to be, having given up and, you know, feeling I can work this out.
It is very pleasing, I have to say.
Yeah,
Not really personal, but it's just
yeah,
more open.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Going beyond feeling he worked this out, it's not good, it's not bad, it's not better, it's not worse, but it may well be more relaxing. I've said that many a time. Yeah. And what is relaxation? Those of you who've been to my talks before, relaxation is I've forgotten that quote myself now. I've given it so many times. That Buddhist quote, relaxation is the nearest thing to Buddhahood. Right here and now. Right here, right now. I mean, that's obviously not quite the same language as I would choose, but it's pretty damn good, that. We've got 5 minutes, folks, for that last killer question. Everybody's got it.
When the self is seen through, does that change how the body is seen?
Does that change how the body is seen, did you say? Or
Yeah.
how the body is seen?
Yeah, in the sense that, like, for example, I feel like I'm in here,
Oh, right, I see
and
what you mean.
I'm seeing the world
Yeah, I see what
through
you
the
mean.
body,
Yeah.
seeing it, hearing it.
Yeah, on that level, yes.
If awareness is not here in particular, but everywhere, does that change the relationship with the body?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it quite in that way of changing the relationship with the body, because again, that's sort of setting up like at least two things. There's me and my relationship with the body. But if I just take the simplicity of what you first started with there, I say, yeah, again, you know, there are no rules about this, but generally speaking, that movement, if you like, from contraction to expansion is also like a physical. I'm going to use the word transformation. I mean, I feel it's a little bit over the top, but it came into my head, so I'd use it. It came into my head, so I think I'll use it. You know, so the way, I mean, I've talked about this and written about it a lot in the past. The terms I use, I don't know if that makes sense to you, is that it's like a movement from contraction to expansion. The difficulty in talking about it is that the contraction that's felt in the body until the point of that expansion isn't usually noticed, and the reason it isn't noticed is because it's always been the case for as long as I've been a kind of conscious being who feels himself to be an individual. So part of that separation, it is really literally also a physical separation. So it's kind of separation into the person, the individual, happens at this very young age. It is also literally a physical sensation. It's like a, you know, all I can say is it's like a tightening. That's not a good word, but it'll do. But because it's all I have consciously known, I don't notice it. And the analogy I often use is a bit of a pathetic analogy, but I can't really think of a better one, is it's like if I've always worn a shoe that's too tight, I will take it for granted. I won't think anything of it. I won't really notice that my foot hurts because it seems to be the natural state. So when there's the explosion out of contraction into that, then it's noticed. So it's when that tension leaves the body, that may be the first time it's noticed. just as if that shoe was suddenly taken off me, I might suddenly realise that the pains in my foot were not the natural state. Oh, God, what a relief, the pain's gone. So yes, I think this very much is, it's called as a psychophysical system. So whatever the hell it is that we're talking about here, and we don't know what it is we're talking about here, even though we give it words. You might give it words like awakening or whatever, it doesn't matter. We don't really, the fact that we use words about it conceals the fact that we don't really know what we're talking about. But when that thing, which is the thing, and which we don't know what it is, when it happens, even though it doesn't really happen, because nothing happens, all of that, but on a very simple level, we could say, when that non-occurrence occurs, yes, there's almost certainly going to be a physical, I'm going to say aspect to it. There's going to be a physical aspect. It's like, if I wanted to represent that physical aspect in some way, in a way which would try rather pathetically and hopelessly to communicate itself to you, it would be a sigh of relief. There's something that I didn't know I had left. Does that make sense at all? Bye bye.
Okay.
A little.
What I meant was for myself, that the body feels like the centre of the universe.
Yes, it will. Yeah.
So does that go away?
So if we're talking about that localized sense, what can happen? Yeah, it tends to, if there's this awakening, it tends to bang. So that's why space no longer makes any sense, because what seems to be an awareness that is located there is suddenly seen to be simply awareness. It's not located anywhere and it's located everywhere or whatever. Now that, what you might call non-localized awareness, right? That might continue like that, or after a period of time, the sensation might be much more that awareness is again localized in a specific space, but without that tension that I was just talking about. So either of those can happen, yeah. But when we talk about the shock, or when people report on the shock of seeing, that's often what the shock is about. The shock is often about the disappearance of any sense that what I thought was me is located here. Yeah. I'm not going to ask now if that made sense or answer the question. Because we're over time, folks, so we'll finish there. Okay, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Richard. Thank you. Thank you for not being here.